Number two, new caller, new guest, new community member. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Banks. Mr. Banks, unmute. Tell folks who don't know where you are. Thank you for being part of Two Way.
I'm in Blythewood, South Carolina. Thank you for your program. I wanted to first say that I support the president's tariff policy. I'm a little disappointed so many people don't. But I want to first say that I'm supporting it by apologizing to Dan and his party. I was a free global trade person, as every Republican was during the 90s. I'm from a small town in Mount Carmel, South Carolina. And there are towns that you've never heard of in County Saluda, Star Iva, Abbeville, Greenwood. They mean nothing to you. But every one of those towns had a textile mill or two or three textile mills where a person, not like myself, I'm in the credentialed class, I've got a master's degree, but there were a bunch of people who were able to graduate from high school on Friday and go to work on Monday at a textile mill where their father was employed, and they could have a three-bedroom house and a car and support themselves and their families, and that was destroyed. So I want to apologize to Richard Gephardt, who was a strong protectionist back in those days, and I was against him and thought he was wrong, just supporting unions. But while his motivations weren't my motivations, the reality is he was more right about his policy for the people where I'm from than I was. So I want to make that statement. And I really don't have a question per se, other than I appreciate your perspective, Sean, is that this has to be given an opportunity to work. I'm sorry, we went through COVID and we cannot have a situation where we don't have things made in this country and we're at the mercy of others. If you look at the statistic, I've heard a lot about this subject. Do people know that Canada, for us to send milk there, it can go from 5% to 200 or 300% tariff? I mean, everybody's acting like we're coming up with something new. We are the offended parties in this tariff war. We're the ones trying to get back to fairness. That's all we want is fairness. I'm willing to have zero tariffs. I'm all for that. But is Canada willing to agree to that? Is Mexico willing to agree to that? Is India willing to agree to that? I think this is the right policy, and I hate it to be painful. I really do. But it's been painful in Saluda and McCormick and Greenwood and Abbeville and other counties like that for 20 years. It's time for us to go in a different direction. Thank you for allowing me to be on your program.
Anthony, thank you. Dan.
Look, Anthony, you don't just speak for the towns of South Carolina, the towns of Pennsylvania and Ohio and Michigan, where factories have been upbolted, sent to China, to Mexico, North Carolina, the other home of the textile industry. I hear it is what powered, or partly a part of what powered Donald Trump. He speaks truth to power in that way, right? I totally agree. If he is able to get all these jobs to come back, to not have inflation skyrocket, and to have other markets open for us and our economy can grow while all of that is happening, amen. Like, I am rooting for America that we be successful. The question is, can those jobs come back, right? What is the trade-off in terms of costs on goods and services? How do you transition, through all of this? Those are it's really a question of, can you do all of that? But I completely hear you that it is right and appropriate to fight for these towns and for Americans that have seen their jobs go overseas. I mean, I've said this story before, when I lobbied on trade on behalf of free trade deals, one of our talking points was 67% of Americans benefit from free trade. It was a U.S. Chamber of Commerce statistics. You know what, in my stomach I cringed at? 33% did not. That's a lot of Americans.
Well, I agree
Sean.
with that.
Do it.
Go ahead.
Go. No, you go, Mr. Banks. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I appreciate that, Dan. If this will appeal to Democrats, this is how I would try to sell it to them. Not only do we need these jobs back for the workers, but think about the principalities that have been literally destroyed because their tax base has been destroyed.
Totally.
These cities don't have the tax base, the tax to business. Then the young people are having to move away.
Yep.
Or have to invest in a degree that may or may not work out for them right away because they feel I can't work in my hometown. I've got to go somewhere else to make a living because the jobs that would pay for a grown adult to have a home, a car, to raise a family is not available in my area.
Anthony,
Totally.
thank you. Sean.
First of all, Anthony, God bless you for what you're saying. Thanks for coming on. I mean, I think people have to understand something that sort of a political undertone from what Anthony's saying. The easy thing to do is to do the same thing. I mean, if Donald Trump wants his poll numbers to go up, just keep kicking the can down the road. Do the same damn thing. Tell everyone you can't fix it. Tell everyone that's the way it's supposed to be and we can't do anything. But to Anthony's point, why is it that whether it's NATO or trade, why is it that we have to be the ones to suck it up over and over and over again? Whether it's Canada, India, Japan, Mexico, why is it that it's harder for our farmers, our service providers, our manufacturers to go into their market, right? It shouldn't be. If you want access to the U.S. market, make it reciprocal. We're not asking for anything more than fairness. It's not free trade when it costs us more. No one would do this. If you went out to dinner every single night and someone said, okay, the bill came, I'll pay, 70%, you pay 30%. Over and over again, if somebody said, hey, at some point we might want to reconfigure this deal, you don't go, you're being so unfair to me. We're the ones getting screwed over and over again. And the political easy thing to do for Donald Trump would be to do the same thing over and over again and continue the same bipartisan excuses that have allowed people to do this for decades. So that's number one. Number two, I think it's ridiculous, as Anthony pointed out, that after COVID, we did nothing to bring manufacturing and PPE back to here. How many more pandemics are we going to suffer through before we look at China, who sent a disease to us and then said, please, sir, may I have another when it came to our PPE and our pharmaceuticals? That's insane.
Yeah, but Sean, that wasn't because we wanted they made it.
No, but we did nothing afterwards to learn our lesson. And that's when, and the last thing I would say, hold on, one more quick point, and then you can say anything you want, is that if you're a Democrat and you truly care about the environment and labor standards, then wouldn't you want things made in America and not places where they abuse their labor force, use child labor, and abuse the environment? If you really care about that, those are supposed to be the tenets of the left, then you want things to come back to the United States where we make things with more labor standards and more environmental standards. So the left should actually support Donald Trump on this.
Dan, real quick, because I want to get one more person in before we go.
Yeah, I mean, Sean, look, I think the left, Bernie Sanders, that this is where the Sanders wing meets the Trump wing. And Democrats would be a huge mistake if we root against America. We want, Sean, in an ideal world, yes. The question is it possible to get all of this back without basically shocking hyperinflation and harming the U.S. economy? That's the issue, right?
Yeah.
Anthony, thank you for coming in. Appreciate it.